Ndị be anyị ekeneni m unu ọzọ n'ụbọchị nke taata. Asịrị m unu ka ọ dịrị anyị na mma. Asị m na ihe adị ka echi na echi ada agwụ agwụ. Ndị ga-esi na-esonyela ihe a bụ Igbo Media, bụ ebe anyị si wee na-ewetara unu ya bụ ngalaba ozi a dị nnukwu mkpa. Anyị si ka anyị gosi unu gbasara maka ihe na-eme na Igbo community and obodo anụ anyị nọ n'ime ya. Dịka o si dị, ọ bụ na nke a bụ mbọsị izizi ị na-ezite chanel anyị bụ Igbo Media, gbaa mbọ rinne ka ị sọskraịbụ and share ya ka o rute ndị ọzọ aka. Maka na infọmeshọn anyị na-enye unu bụ ihe unu ga-ama gbasara maka ihe na-eme n'obodo a, anụkwunu mara ka unu si akwado na ya bụ ife bụ ya ka anyị si ka anyị drọpụ ọrụ bifo anyị gosi unu ihe anyị ji maka ya wee bịa. Ị ga-esi ya bụ ife anyị ji maka ya wee bịa, ị drọpụrụ anyị alụ gị ife iche gbasara maka ya bụ ife ndị niile ekwu n'iru akwụkwọ. Alright, over to you, sir.
Talking about Oyo State, okay. The Oyo State Police Command says it has arrested 20 suspected Yoruba Nation agitators who invaded the state government secretariat, Agodi, in Ibadan, the state capital. The State Police Commissioner, Hamzat Adebola, had detailed an investigation and detained, persons in that regard, with the Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of State Criminal Investigation Department leading the team to unravel the circumstances surrounding the incident. Scores of agitators had earlier on Saturday stormed the secretariat in army camouflage, armed with dangerous weapons and charms. A statement from the command said that 20 suspects had been arrested in possession of 3 pump-action guns, 291 live cartridges, 2 expended cartridges, 67 cutlasses, 5 bulletproof vests, 6 pairs of boots, and 10 Magophone 3 Odua-styled beret caps, 7 bells, 11 Odua Nation Army camouflage attire, 1 unregistered Nissan urban bus, and 3 TVS motorcycles. In the meantime, Yoruba Nation campaigner Sunday Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday IGBO, has condemned the invasion and dissociated himself from the aggressors. IGBO also restated his stance for non-violent and peaceful negotiation. Well, that's the story. Yes, okay. Okay, we have a guest. Okay. We now have Professor Ejiofor Ajidibe, who is a professor of international relations and political science, Nasarawa State University, Kefi, Nigeria. He joins me now to explore, critical angles to this subject. Well, Professor Adibe, my friend, good to have you on this day live, where I invited you to come and talk first about the Middle East crisis, not to talk about, crisis in Western Nigeria. So I would rather start with what I invited you for. Now, the Americans, they say they have intervened. Now, as Iran actually taught Israel a lesson, which is what the Iranians are saying.
Oh, hello.
Yes, I'm with you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm not sure about teaching a lesson. There are something that is a constant in Middle East politics in the relations among the states, especially Israel and other states like Iran, and especially Iran. And it is that it is about retaliation. The key drivers of Israeli policy have been preemptive strike. If they discover you are developing a capability that will hurt them in future, they attack preemptively to destroy that capability. The other one is retaliatory response. So each time you hurt them one way or the other, be very certain they will retaliate. And that goes the same with Iran. So it's not about a lesson. On April 1st, Israel, mistakenly or not, attacked Damascus, a Syrian site. Killing some, Revolutionary Guard members. So Iran, everybody knew that Iran said at that time that they were going to retaliate. And everybody knew they would. So this is a retaliation for that attack that killed some members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So it's not about teaching a lesson. In any case, they were said to have fired about 300 cruise and ballistic missiles, in which Israel said they were able to, forestall and deactivate 99% of them. That actually only one girl that was hurt and taken to the hospital. And there was a coalition in Israel, Israeli forces, French forces, and UK forces that were said to have provided the technology that led to the interception of those missiles and their neutralization. So I'm not sure it's going to be a lesson. But one thing is constant. If you go by the key drivers of Israeli policy in the Middle East, as I said, one is preemptive strike. The other one is retaliatory response. So they are going to now attack preemptively. In other words, they are likely to attack Iran to destroy their capacity to build missiles, to build or destroy missiles, cruise or ballistic. That is certain. When they will do that, we don't know. The other one is retaliatory response. And once you attack their interest, especially from the Middle East area, they are going to attack using what Colin Powell will call overwhelming force. When they respond or they retaliate, the retaliation tends to be disproportionate to the original attack. These are certain things that will happen. And already, you can see that the Iranian foreign minister was warning Israel not to retaliate. The world is warning Israel not to retaliate. But something is certain, they will retaliate. That has been their pattern in the relationship in the Middle East since 1947.
Well, but a lot of people have been saying we face the prospect of a third world war. Do you think that proposition is true, viable, that there could be a third world war on our hands with the escalation of crisis in the Middle East? Now, Iran, as Biden calls it, has retaliated. But certainly that will not be the end of it. What's next? What do you think will be next?
Well, I think the expectations of a third world war is over-dramatized.
Trump.
I don't think it's going to happen.
It's Trump that says Iran. It's Trump. Yeah. It's Trump that says Iran.
Yes. People can say that because of the escalation of the crisis. But one thing the first question you should ask yourself will be, who are the friends and foes of the two sides to the conflict? So if you look at the 1967, the 1967 war, the Six-Day War, where the Yom Kippur War of 1973, where Soviet Union, which was a supporter of the Arab world, a supporter of Jordan, Egypt, and Syria that attacked, they were not able to stop America and these allies. In fact, within a space of that 6 days, it ended quickly. So who are the allies of Iran? The key allies of allies are Soviet Union, Russia. Russia is bogged in the war with Ukraine. And this capability to project power onto the global space has been seriously curtailed. There is also India. India has been supporting Iran, not necessarily because of anything, but because it wanted to create a space so that it can reach straight to Afghanistan and Central Asia without going through Pakistan. So they are helping to expand their ports in southeast Iran. So there is also China in some ways. China is driven by economic diplomacy. They are not likely to come out. So on the side of the allies, you look at, say, Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Iran are in conflict over which of the countries is the leader of the Muslim world. Persia is dominantly Shiite. Saudi Arabia is Sunni. So You can't even mobilize pan-Arabism or pan-Islamism in the fight against anybody. Then you have support from North Korea. North Korea has its own problem. It cannot project power on the global space. On the face of it, you see that NATO has been expanding with more members joining in. So it's not going to be easy. The prospect of any World War III for me is completely ruled out. There will be an escalation in the crisis because Israel for sure is going to attack preemptively to destroy the capability of Iran to deploy future missiles. It is also going to retaliate. That is for certain. We don't know when it will come. There will be an escalation, but somehow, once power is disequilibrated in the Middle East, there's also a tendency for them to find a way of bringing it back to balance. I think the fear of a third world war, I mean, it's overstretched.
Okay, but what is the direct implication of this for the conflict between Israel and Hamas? Because it wasn't just Iran attacking Israel. There was also attack from the Hezbollah end. That's why I raised the question about the possibility of a third world war.
Well, you know, when if you look at the history of the Arab-Israeli wars, they say look at the fourth Arab-Israeli war, which we call the Yom Kippur War in 1973. There were still the three countries, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. It lasted 19 days. And within those 19 days, Israel, with the support of US, and despite Soviet support to the other side, within 19 days, they had actually encircled the Egyptian army before the war stopped. This is the longest war. The lesson we are going to learn about this is the changing nature of war. This is the longest war Israel has ever fought in the Middle East. Don't forget, fighting the combination of Arab forces, Israel was able to defeat them within 6 days, within 19 days. Now, Hamas, the population as 2017 was only 590,000 people. And 7 months into the war, Israel has not been able to defeat them comprehensively. The same thing you can say about Iran. So we are now coming back to what Karl Clausewitz, a 19th century Prussian general, called a fog of war. Once you start a war, especially in modern times, you will know its dynamics. Russia has been boxed. In fact, some people believe that America deliberately tricked Russia into the Ukraine war in order to turn it into its own Vietnam and bog it down and stop the projection of power, because under Putin, Russia began again to project power into the global space. We don't know. But what's happening is that we are now going to learn the lesson that you're a big and mighty power does not necessarily mean you will win a war easily. Nobody would have expected that Israel, with all its capabilities and support, 7 months into a war with a population of only 590,000 people, is still struggling. The lesson is that the nature of war is changing.
The nature of war is changing. Where does this leave some of the allies? For example, Rishi Sunak, who faces an election in the United Kingdom, and also President Biden, who also faces an election. And then what's next for Israel? These are some of the indications.
Well, remarkably, I'm sure you will remember that in 1980, Jimmy Carter lost the election because of Iran. You remember the hostage crisis of 1980, where 52 American hostages were held, and Carter was unable to release them. This is exactly what probably will happen. What I foresee is that among the Muslims and some young people in the U.S., the way the U.S. has handled the Israeli attack on Hamas, it's many people are not happy. The young, progressive-minded people have been anti-Biden. But now the Iranian attack on Israel, which reminds people of the threat, the existential threat Israel says it faces. Remember, all along they said they don't want to recognize the state of Israel. They will drive it into the sea. So those missile attack will also remind people of the existential threat Israel faces. and might actually mute the opposition to Biden's way of handling it. It is, of course, dicey because there's substantial Muslim and Arab population in the U.S. And but the young people across, people who are not progressive-minded people who felt or still feel that Israel's retaliation has been disproportionate and massive, and has led to a number of humanitarian crises. Israel can now play it up and say, this is exactly what we face, and this is why we want to exterminate Hamas. By the way, I always felt, could it have been a better way for Israel to handle this? I think so. For example, what if Israel had insisted that Gaza, not Hamas, Hamas and Gaza, they are different entities, that Gaza should give up the ringleaders of the attack of October 7 that killed 1,200 Israelis and captured 200 Israelis as hostages. We should not disentangle this because they are related. If Israel had played the card exactly as US did before they attacked Afghanistan in 2021, they would have got more sympathy. On the other hand, the global community that has been condemning Israel, and rightly so, should have also insisted that Gaza should give up the ringleaders of the attack of October 7. Remember, US went to war against Afghanistan because Afghanistan, the Taliban, refused to give up Osama bin Laden, and that was what led to the war. So I think Israel should have made that distinction and said, give up the ringleaders and we'll handle them, and there will be no retaliation. But as I said, the drivers of their foreign policy in the Middle East, there are two key drivers. One, preemptive strike. The other one is retaliatory response. So once you do, you do me, I do you. This is Mosaic law.
Professor Atibe, before I let you go, Palestinians in Gaza, they are excited, of course. So could you speak to the issue of the Palestinian reaction to Iran coming into the conflict, and Hezbollah also? Because not many people have been talking about Hezbollah also attacking Israel, and how the people of Gaza have reacted. Hamas, to be specific, Palestinians in Gaza.
Well, there has been jubilation in that site because it's an emotional response. And in fact, when the Hamas attacked Israel on their Holy Week and killed 1,200, there was also a lot of jubilation. But then, where does that lead? Hezbollah, you should understand, they are Shiites, so they share a lot of commonalities with Iran, and it is expected that they will continue to support. But what is their capability beyond the Middle East? And we can forecast that, likely again, Israel is likely to attack again Hezbollah assets in Lebanon. They are trying, because they know they supply arms, to Iran. They are likely to go after them. That's what will part of the preemptive strike, to destroy their capability to supply, lethal weapons to Iran. That rejoicing is, tantamount to what we find when there is a military coup and people, troop to the streets to welcome them. But after that euphoria, reality will set in. Reality will set in because Israel will respond. So the world now for us to say, if we follow Israeli history, is for world to start thinking of how do we stop Israel? What will Israel need to be able not to respond? But if you go back to their history, there has never been a time they attacked without responding.
Professor Adibe, on this issue of Israel and Hamas and all the other parties involved, the UN Security Council, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, where are we with global peace, which would seem to be the major issue in this conversation? So all these UN institutions, are they effectual in terms of keeping global peace? You are a professor of international relations. Where are we?
Dr. Abati, you read law. You also know that international law, there continues to be a question. It's even international law. In the UN system itself, you know the Security Council, there are 5 powers that wield the veto power. Anything you say about Israel, be sure America will veto it if it's against that. And in this election year, it is suicidal for any candidate to be seen as going against Israel because its power in the Israel is very enormous. So the UN said it was going to have a meeting by 4 p.m. their own time. And we are still expecting the outcome of the War Council meeting, which Netanyahu said it was going to call about what happened. But what are we going to get is the usual condemnation. It is easier in the General Assembly to just morally condemn an action. What is difficult is when it comes to the Security Council, where you have to take a decision that will require some form of enforcement. And because you need the consensus of the 5 veto-wielding powers, it is difficult to arrive at consensus. China has called for restraint. Russia has called for restraint, and they have sympathy for Iran. U.S., as Joe Biden has said, look, we have ironclad support, for Israel. Donald Trump himself has said, look, if I were in power, this wouldn't have happened, because in an election year, there comes a competition of who is more Israel, who is more pro-Israel among the candidates. So we're going to see how it works out.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Jideofor Adibe, for joining us on this Live, the Sunday Talk Show.
What about Lionel? Ibablo Senate President, Ibablo Vice President, nothing. And the new Muyindi na Megasquano, Umuna is so gonna above Famba. Mako Kive, Jemegidezie, Adrozi, Asimo Guinea, Mezi, or the Carlo. Arachosidi Mai Negodin Kobodo Sidi. Came Jide 1 night workable Mazin and the Canon Boro. Akomakandi Igbo. Can you Joe Miller? Makosi na Igbo Gadi, Makos na Gadi, na Gadi Cage, nature da guagu. What you also jide Joe Gaudra. Gonna get the Mazin and the Cano. Akomakos in Igbo Yadi. Because the give up today if I bo Igbo media, I know snow no buy, on no buy Kainaso. So because Beneda no Igbo, Iwe when again, on no buy Kaijako your name eba. Kago kwa ni ine ku before. Une okuniwe. Ka ife onye ndu melu. Ọ sị na ya na-eme mgbomgbe ndị Igbo na-abịa n'alụ ọ na-ewute ya. Simon Ekpapini ya anyị agbaba ya mgba ka e mere obedient movement. Akwụwụrụ okwu Maazị Nnamdi Kanu kwuru before ejide ya. They will never give you that president, that seat. Akwụdoro na ya na Peter Obi winere mana nyere ya. Gịnị ka nsị ya bụ? Mba. Igbo mana na ife. Maka oke esi na-ekwuzi okwu oke ife ga na-esi na-emezi. Ọ bụ na ịkpọrọ onwe gị meeting. Chukwu onwe gị ọnụ, jụọ onwe gị ajụ a ka ebe ịkwụ n'obodo a bụ Naịjirịa. Ajụ nchọkwa onye ọbụla bụ onye Igbo na-ege m ntị n'elu akwụkwọ a, jụọ onwe ya. Na na-ejicha onwe gị ya bụ ife isaa ya. Ọ gwụna ka m n'ọnụ. Ihe a bụ Igbo Media. Daalụ n'ụmụnne.